chosen ones, you have reached a pivotal moment in your spiritual journey, and it is no coincidence that you find yourself here now. As something profound is unfolding within you, a stirring that refuses to be silenced by familiar routines or comfortable beliefs. You are no longer satisfied with the same explanations you once accepted without question, and you feel a clear and urgent call that sets you apart from those around you. This shift is not about losing faith. On the contrary, it is an invitation to experience it more deeply than ever before. You are embarking on a path that requires you to step away from traditions that once seemed unshakable and to trust in an inner voice that whispers of higher truths. It may seem unsettling at first because leaving anything that once anchored you can create a sense of uncertainty. Yet, in this uncertainty lies the possibility of encountering the divine in a more direct and personal way. You may have noticed that your conversations with people who remain in those traditional settings feel different now. They might question your motives or accuse you of straying from the right path. In fact, some may even see your decision as a betrayal because it challenges the norms they have always relied upon. But the truth is, you are not rejecting faith or turning away from divine wisdom. You are, instead, following a deeper calling that tells you there is more to discover beyond the boundaries of what you have always known. In stepping away from the familiar, you create space for an intimate relationship with the sacred that cannot be restricted by walls, routines, or the interpretations of others. This call goes beyond mere independence. It is an affirmation that your spiritual identity does not require validation through traditional gatherings or hierarchical structures. You are learning that the essence of faith lives within you at every moment, waiting for your acknowledgement. While some people may still need those traditional spaces to guide their understanding, you have evolved in such a way that the old framework can no longer contain the vastness of your connection to the divine. By responding to this inner prompting, you honor a higher purpose and accept that you have been chosen to walk a path where your direct communion with the sacred becomes your guiding force. Embracing this path means opening yourself to new insights that arrive in unexpected ways. A conversation with a stranger can become a sacred teaching. A sudden moment of silence can be a profound communion. The presence of nature can reveal the gentleness of the Creator's voice. These experiences become your sanctuary, a living testimony of how profoundly God is woven into every breath you take. This is not a rejection of your earlier religious experiences. Instead, it is the blossoming of a new chapter where you realize that the entire world can serve as a temple when your heart is willing to receive it. Many who have felt this calling describe a sense of restlessness at first, a disquieting feeling that no church service or group activity can quell. In that restlessness, there is a divine seed being planted, urging you to move beyond the usual. Perhaps you once found solace in rituals that now feel like hollow repetitions. Perhaps the sermons that used to inspire you now leave you wanting more, something that cannot be articulated by another human being, but rather must be experienced personally. This longing for something deeper is not a defect in your character or an indication that you are lost. It is, in fact, the very sign that you are being guided toward a higher plane of spiritual understanding. Though it can be tempting to judge yourself harshly for not fitting in where you once belonged, remember that this is not about exclusivity or superiority. You are not being called because you are inherently better than anyone else. Instead, you are being guided to a unique role that has its own distinct responsibilities and challenges. The divine hand that shapes your journey recognizes the specific qualities and strengths you possess, as well as the lessons you need to learn. This is why your path looks different from that of those around you. Instead of feeling guilty for leaving behind certain customs or gatherings, you can choose to see it as an act of profound obedience. You sense that the voice calling you forward is not merely a personal whim. It is something that resonates with a truth so powerful it cannot be contained within the boundaries of tradition. When you listen carefully, you realize that this voice carries the authority of the sacred. It reassures you that you are protected, guided, and loved in a way that defies conventional explanation. Your decision to heed this voice is a demonstration of trust. Trust in the wisdom of the one who leads you, even if you cannot yet see where the path ends. Stepping away from structured faith communities can bring feelings of isolation. However, it is often in solitude that the divine communicates most directly. In the quiet spaces, you discover that you are never truly alone, for the presence you seek is always with you. Without the familiar supports of your old environment, you learn to stand in a faith that is genuinely your own. You begin to discern the distinction between beliefs borrowed from others and truth that arises from within. This inner truth, once illuminated, can never be taken away from you by anyone's criticism or doubt. Take comfort in knowing that the path of the chosen is rarely a crowded one. The misunderstandings you face, the judgments cast upon you, and even the betrayals you endure can serve as catalysts for deeper devotion. Each obstacle becomes an invitation to prove to yourself and to God that your faith is not dependent on public approval, but anchored in a revelation that transcends ordinary comprehension. In this new season, you may find that what once fulfilled you spiritually no longer does. The messages that once inspired you might now feel repetitive or superficial, as though you are hearing the same words without tapping into the richness of the experience. This is not because you have lost reverence for the sacred. Rather, it is a sign that your soul is hungering for direct communion. There is a profound intimacy that you are called to discover, a relationship not mediated by others, but formed in the quiet, unspoken language of your own heart. One of the greatest realizations you will have is that external places or gatherings do not hold a monopoly on holiness. You begin to see the sacred manifest in every aspect of life, a sunrise that stirs awe in your spirit, a kind gesture from a stranger that feels like divine confirmation, or even the stillness of your own breath as you pause in gratitude. These become your touchstones, small yet powerful reminders that the divine meets you exactly where you are, no matter your location or circumstances. As you grow more confident in this personal form of worship, you may encounter criticism from those who misunderstand. They might perceive your departure as arrogance or assume you no longer believe. Some may even suggest that you are drifting into spiritual confusion. Yet, what they fail to comprehend is that this journey is an expansion of faith rather than an abandonment of it. You are moving away from dependency on established forms and into an era of direct encounters with the source of all that is holy. In doing so, you are not disowning your heritage, you are letting it evolve into something more vibrant and profound. During this transition, patience becomes an essential virtue. Patience with yourself as you adapt to a new way of relating to the divine, and patience with those who do not grasp the depth of what you're experiencing. Remember, each person's path is uniquely orchestrated, and what resonates with your soul may not resonate with others. In recognizing this truth, you move beyond the impulse to argue or justify your choices. Instead, you embody a tranquility rooted in certainty that you are walking in alignment with your calling. Do not be disheartened by those who claim you have lost your way. True spiritual direction often looks like wandering to people who cannot see the bigger picture. In truth, you are not wandering aimlessly, you are pursuing a greater clarity that can only be found outside the limitations of traditional frameworks. What appears to be distance from the old is actually closeness to an unfiltered experience of God's presence. This newfound understanding becomes a wellspring of courage. Though you might feel alone at times, you discover a powerful companionship in the one who has beckoned you to step beyond all that you once knew. When the calling becomes undeniable, you may reflect on how you arrived at this moment. Perhaps you remember moments of dissonance during sermons where your heart yearned for more depth or perceived an inconsistency that others did not seem to notice. Maybe you felt a pang of guilt for wishing that the service would end so you could return to the silence that truly nourished your spirit. Each small sign was pointing you toward a reality that transcends common religious frameworks. Over time, these nudges accumulate, culminating in a revelation. The sacred is not confined to a predetermined set of hours on a designated day. This realization can feel both liberating and daunting. Liberating because you begin to sense an immense openness in your relationship with the divine, as though you can finally breathe without constraints. Daunting because leaving behind the security of your former community can feel like stepping into the unknown. Still, your soul cannot ignore what it knows to be true. The conviction that God desires a more direct relationship with you becomes stronger than the fear of letting go. As you embrace this inner certainty, you discover new ways of nurturing your connection to the sacred. You might spend more time in reflective solitude, allowing your thoughts to settle and your heart to speak. You might find spiritual resonance in creative pursuits, expressions of art or music that reflect the heartbeat of the divine. You might even find yourself seeking natural environments, a forest clearing, a seaside overlook, or a quiet park bench, where you feel the pulse of creation echoing in your own being. In these personal sanctuaries, you realize that worship is not an event but a state of being. You worship through your gratitude, your compassion for others, and your willingness to grow. You worship through the choices you make daily, aiming to align them with the loving character that the divine invites you to embody. No one can dictate these forms of worship to you because they emerge organically from your own soul's unique conversation with the Creator. At times, the change can draw a sharp contrast between your evolving perspective and that of the community you once embraced. Some may attempt to draw you back, citing doctrines or traditions as reasons you cannot possibly be living in the truth. Others might dismiss your journey as a misguided venture, but deep within, you recognize that you are answering a call that resonates with the most profound part of your being. This resonance, this unmistakable alignment, is what fuels your resolve. You stand firm in the knowledge that God's presence is not diminished by your absence from any building. You stand in the grace of a greater truth, one that unfolds moment by moment as you walk in genuine communion with the source of your faith. Through this transformative process, you gain a powerful insight your faith was never meant to be limited by human constructs. Institutions and traditions can serve as helpful starting points, introducing core principles and providing a community where faith can grow. Yet there comes a moment when certain souls are prompted to outgrow those initial boundaries. You realize that the purpose of those structures was not to confine you forever, but to prepare you for a more expansive, unmediated relationship with the divine. As you step forward, you notice shifts happening in unexpected areas of your life. Perhaps you start noticing synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that catch your attention and seem to guide you forward. You might find yourself awakened to a new sense of purpose, a calling to share your voice or talents in ways you never considered possible. The more you honor this deeper connection, the more life itself becomes a series of divine messages, confirming that you have chosen rightly by listening to your inner promptings. It is also common to experience a re-evaluation of priorities. What once seemed essential might now appear trivial or disconnected from your newfound sense of truth. You might feel called to relinquish old habits or relationships that cannot support your spiritual evolution. This can be painful, especially if it involves distancing yourself from friends or mentors who cannot understand why your path has taken this turn. Yet, letting go does not mean you lack compassion or respect for them. It simply means you are following the path you are meant to walk, trusting that every soul must find its own way to alignment. Contrary to what some might believe, living without traditional religious structures does not leave you unanchored. In fact, you become more anchored than ever before because your foundation is the divine itself, not the rules or interpretations of others. Your sense of peace does not hinge on external validation or affirmation. This inner grounding fortifies you against the storms of life in ways that rituals alone never could. In moments of doubt, those times when old conditioning creeps back in, suggesting you have made a grave error, you can recall the unmistakable peace you feel when you honor this path. That peace is your compass. It is the assurance that you are not alone or misguided, but held in a love that longs to reveal itself to you at every turn. Though your journey may look unconventional, it is not chaotic. You are, in fact, stepping into an order that transcends human logic, an order orchestrated by a wisdom beyond comprehension. This wisdom, deeply personal yet universally available, is what sustains you, and so you press on, confident that the decision to depart from institutional confines is in reality a homecoming to the heart of your faith. At some point, you might look back and recognize the ways people tried to confine your spirituality, possibly without even realizing it. They offered formulas, traditions, and expectations, hoping these would foster a closer bond with divine. Yet, for you, the result became a sense of limitation, as though your spirit wanted to soar, but was tethered to the ground by these weighty expectations. Then came the moment of revelation. You understood that God's presence cannot be limited to a system, no matter how well-intentioned that system might be. Your liberation from these limitations is a testament to how profoundly your faith has matured. Instead of needing an external structure to legitimize your beliefs, you now trust in a direct line of communication that flows from your heart to the sacred. This does not mean you dismiss others' paths or reject the possibility that they might find meaning in places you no longer do. In fact, you can still honor the sincerity of those who engage in communal worship. However, you have come to realize that your path lies outside such confines, and you embrace it without regret. This awakening also reveals your inherent responsibility. Direct communion with the divine means you can no longer delegate your spirituality to an institution or a leader. You cannot rely on others to interpret sacred wisdom on your behalf. You are tasked with entering the quiet spaces of your soul, listening carefully, and living out the truths that emerge. This requires both humility and courage. It demands that you be honest about your doubts, your fears, and your desires, bringing all of it into the light of God's presence. In this vulnerability, you experience the sweetness of genuine intimacy with the one who knows you better than you know yourself. Such intimacy can transform how you see the world. You may find it easier to perceive the threads of unity in all living beings, recognizing that love is the essence that binds us. You might also become more attuned to injustice or suffering, feeling an urgent call to respond with compassion. As your awareness deepens, your life becomes a direct extension of the spiritual truths you are discovering. Each day offers opportunities to manifest divine attributes, kindness, patience, wisdom, beyond the walls of any religious institution. People observing this change might be puzzled or even fearful, assuming you have forsaken your roots. It can be challenging for them to grasp how a person can be deeply faithful without the customary signs of religiosity. That is where your life's testimony speaks louder than any sermon. Your consistency in love, your willingness to stand for truth, and your quiet certainty that you walk in step with divine guidance become the evidence of your authentic faith. And while some may still not understand, their lack of understanding does not negate the reality you live each day. You have become an embodiment of what happens when you choose to follow the sacred beyond the threshold of tradition. As you continue forward, you may sense a difference in the quality of your prayer life. What used to be recitations or formal requests transforms into ongoing dialogue. You realize prayer does not require a special script, but can be as natural as talking to a trusted friend. Words sometimes fail you, and in those moments you learn that silence can communicate even more powerfully. This evolution in prayer reflects your comfort in being real with the divine, holding nothing back. The pretense falls away because you have no congregation to impress, no spiritual hierarchy to appease. The result is an honesty that shapes your faith from within. In the stillness of these honest exchanges, you discover a presence that gently but firmly guides you. It points out areas in your life where love can flourish more freely, where forgiveness can break old chains, and where courage can replace fear. These insights become your sermons, delivered not by a preacher but by the sacred voice dwelling within you. Consequently, you find yourself yearning not just for personal transformation, but also for a broader impact on the world around you. You realize that the changes in your heart naturally overflow into compassionate action toward others. This inner transformation might confuse those who believe spiritual growth must follow a prescribed route. They have been taught that one's relationship with God should be managed under structured authority. The freedom you exhibit might challenge or threaten them because it shows that true faith cannot be contained. But do not let their confusion deter you. If anything, it provides an opportunity to share that the divine meets individuals in a myriad of ways, many of which transcend conventional methods. Indeed, your journey can serve as a beacon of hope for those silently wrestling with similar yearnings. They may sit in pews each week, wondering why they still feel an emptiness that communal gatherings fail to fill. By living your truth authentically, you offer an example of what it looks like to heed an inner call, even if it means stepping away from what is familiar. You demonstrate that a deep, personal, and life-altering encounter with the sacred is possible without the trappings of institution. This is not a mission to convert others to your viewpoint. Rather, it is an invitation for them to explore their own unspoken questions. Sometimes, simply by walking a path of freedom, you become a lighthouse for those lost in the fog of dogma, helping them see there might be another way. When people question your reasons, answer them gently. Explain that your decision was born of love, reverence, and a desire to listen more attentively to the voice of God in your life. Whether they accept your explanation is out of your control, but the seed planted through your honesty can take root in its own time. And in that possibility lies the promise of spiritual awakening for those who are ready to embrace it. Another crucial aspect of this journey is learning to trust your own discernment. When traditional structures are removed, it becomes your responsibility to distinguish between the voice of the divine and the many other voices, cultural, familial, societal, that clamor for attention. This can be a delicate process, requiring you to sharpen your intuition and remain vigilant against self-deception or wishful thinking. Yet the more you practice listening, the clearer the divine voice becomes. You begin to recognize its texture, its gentle yet firm guidance, which often asks you to grow beyond your comfort zone and practice sacrificial love. In this ongoing process, humility is your shield against arrogance. Recognizing that you are chosen for a particular path does not mean you see yourself as infallible. On the contrary, you realize the magnitude of being entrusted with such a calling. You do not cling to pride, but cultivate a humble dependence on God, understanding that without divine direction, you could easily veer off course. This humility balances the exhilarating sense of spiritual freedom with the sober awareness that growth is a continuous journey, not a final destination. As you lean into discernment, you may notice heightened sensitivity to energies or emotions around you. You pick up on what lies beneath casual conversations, perceiving hurt or longing in others that they may never explicitly state. This sensitivity can be overwhelming if you have not yet developed practices to replenish your spiritual and emotional reserves. Thus, part of your new rhythm may involve intentional times of retreat, silent reflection, or creative expression that allows you to process what you absorb. These practices help you maintain inner balance, ensuring that your empathy remains a conduit for love rather than a source of personal depletion. At the same time, you gain clarity about boundaries, when to say yes to someone's need and when to lovingly decline to protect your well-being. You no longer operate from guilt or obligation, but from a place of wisdom that discerns the highest good in each situation. This kind of clarity is one of the gifts that arise when you walk a path guided directly by divine wisdom, rather than the expectations of religious or social institutions. All these shifts reflect the reality of a living, evolving faith. It is a faith that grows with you as you mature in love, compassion, and awareness. You no longer perform spiritual acts to maintain appearances. Instead, your life becomes a genuine overflow of your connection with the sacred. Like a tree planted by a river, you find yourself nourished from within, bearing fruit in due season without striving to meet external demands. The more you rest in this rhythm, the more you see that every moment is an opportunity to embody divine love, turning ordinary tasks into sacred offerings. Over time, you realize that the lessons you need most do not always come with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive in the whisper of your own conscience, prompting you to act with kindness in a situation where you might have responded with anger or apathy. Other times, they appear as moments of conviction, calling you to correct a hidden fault or reconcile a strained relationship. Such lessons reinforce that your spiritual growth is not an abstract concept, but a lived reality manifested through daily choices. This sense of accountability deepens because you are no longer following a prescribed script. You are crafting your path with each decision, guided by the sacred presence that speaks through love. There is no fallback mechanism of simply complying with a religious routine. You stand in the strength of an internal moral compass, shaped by direct communion with the one who called you. This can be sobering because excuses become harder to sustain when you know you have free, undiluted access to divine wisdom. In this new space, you may develop an aversion to empty words or hollow gestures. You might find it draining to take in discussions that revolve around dogmatic debates without genuine love at their core. Perhaps you become more selective about where you invest your energy, opting to spend time in environments or relationships that nurture authenticity and spiritual depth. While this may feel isolating, it also carves out a protective sanctuary for your soul, a space where you can continually return to your deepest intentions and remain aligned with your calling. Freedom also brings the opportunity for creativity in expressing your devotion. You may find yourself journaling heartfelt prayers, composing music that resonates with your spiritual insights, or simply walking in nature while inviting the presence of God to speak through the rustling leaves and birdsong. Without rigid frameworks, you are free to discover how worship flows uniquely from your being. This fluidity breathes life into every aspect of your day, making you more aware of the sacred dimension of even the simplest tasks. Nevertheless, challenges will arise. Not everyone will accept or appreciate your choices, and some might use your departure from traditional practices as justification to question your sincerity. Yet, these misunderstandings do not hold the power to diminish your truth. In fact, they can refine it. Each time you stand firm in your conviction, lovingly explaining or silently exemplifying the depth of your connection, you strengthen your faith. You learn that human opinion can neither validate nor nullify what is inherently holy within you. If anything, such resistance can heighten your resolve, reminding you why you had to step away in the first place, to protect and nurture the sacred flame that burns within your heart. In stepping away, you also begin to grasp an even more expansive view of unity. The labels and divisions that once seemed so vital, denominations, sect-specific theologies, start to fade in importance. You come to understand that the source of love and truth extends beyond all these categories. Indeed, it becomes apparent that the sacred essence is present in every genuine yearning for goodness, regardless of the language or customs used to express it. This realization can be both freeing and humbling, as you see that no single tradition holds a monopoly on divine reality. With this perspective, your empathy and respect for different faith journeys grow. You recognize that each person's path is shaped by unique experiences, cultural backgrounds, and personal revelations. You no longer need to prove anyone right or wrong, because you sense that true spiritual awakening is more about inner transformation than external correctness. You also become cautious with your own words, understanding that humility must govern how you share your insights. The last thing you want is to replace one dogma with another. In fact, you realize that the more you open yourself to diverse perspectives, the richer your own spiritual tapestry becomes. You glean wisdom from unexpected places, seeing traces of divine truth in conversations and teachings you might previously have dismissed. This broader scope does not dilute your faith, rather, it adds layers of depth, reminding you that the Creator's ways are far greater than human constructs can fully capture. By embracing the multifaceted nature of spiritual experience, you become more adept at recognizing divine fingerprints in the most unlikely settings. Still, you remain vigilant about what genuinely resonates with your innermost truth. Not everything labeled spiritual aligns with your calling. A discerning between authentic revelation and mere superficiality requires you to stay anchored in genuine commune with God. It also involves a continued willingness to learn, adjust, and even admit mistakes. This posture keeps you grounded, ensuring that your search for universal wisdom does not devolve into aimless wandering. The result is a newfound sense of belonging that does not hinge on institutional affiliation. You belong to a reality that is larger, deeper, and more inclusive than any single building or congregation. This belonging is rooted in your relationship with the sacred, a bond that transcends all boundaries. It liberates you from feeling like a spiritual orphan just because you do not sit in a pew. Instead, you sense that you are part of an ever-growing family of souls who listen to the same divine heartbeat, each one responding in a unique way. You share this kinship with anyone who has surrendered to the call of love, even if your external practices differ. And that realization is profoundly unifying, reminding you that the path you walk, though distinctive, is woven into a far grander tapestry of spiritual awakening. As you continue to integrate these revelations, you may experience moments of profound tenderness. Something as simple as observing a leaf floating on a gentle breeze can bring tears to your eyes, stirring a sense of awe for the artistry of creation. You realize that what you once sought in special services or scripted ceremonies is available in the understated elegance of everyday life. In these moments of quiet wonder, you feel closer to the Creator than ever before. Such heightened sensitivity fosters a deeper gratitude for life itself. You become aware of blessings you previously took for granted: a warm meal, a kind word, a safe place to rest. Each act of grace appears as an extension of divine generosity. As this gratitude grows, it spills over into empathy for those who suffer. You begin to notice how many people remain unseen and unheard, often right in your own community. Feeling the sacred flow of compassion, you might be compelled to take action, whether through volunteering activism or simply lending a listening ear to someone in pain. In that sense, your departure from traditional institutions can fuel a broader vision of service. Instead of channeling your energies solely into church-based programs, you find yourself reaching out in more organic and sometimes unexpected ways. You realize that genuine ministry, if we can use that term, does not have to be organized under any banner. It can occur in a phone call to a lonely neighbor, a meal prepared for someone who is grieving, or a word of encouragement to a stranger who seems burdened. Your faith becomes a living expression of divine love, unrestrained by scheduled gatherings or official titles. Moreover, you start seeing the invisible threads that link your personal journey to the collective human story. You recognize that every individual you meet is on some form of spiritual quest, whether they acknowledge it or not. This realization dismantles barriers of judgment. You no longer feel the impulse to classify people as saved or lost, insider or outsider. Instead, you see fragile hearts yearning for wholeness, and you become more eager to reflect the kind of compassion and understanding you yourself have received. All of this unfolds without the constant oversight or endorsement of a religious institution. While some might argue that structure is necessary to prevent chaos, you witness a different kind of order emerging, a divine order that arranges people and circumstances in ways that ignite growth, healing, and transformation. It may not be systematic in the human sense, but it carries a profound sense of timing and synchronicity. Each new interaction or discovery feels orchestrated to teach you something vital, deepening your trust in a love that exceeds all expectations. In this expansive mode of living, faith becomes less about reciting beliefs and more about embodying truth, carrying it in your every interaction. Inevitably, there will be times when you look back on the life you left behind and feel a pang of nostalgia. You may recall moments of fellowship or traditions that once brought you comfort. Sometimes you might even wish you could simply blend back into the familiar crowd, free from the burden of walking this less traveled road. This is natural and does not signify weakness in your conviction. It is a reminder that transitions involve mourning the loss of what once provided a sense of belonging, even if that belonging was never a perfect fit. When these feelings surface, allow yourself the grace to process them. Remember the lessons that led you to walk this path, the realization that your soul yearned for a more direct connection, the inner voice that guided you beyond the walls of tradition. You chose this route not out of rebellion, but out of genuine devotion. Let those truths anchor you when sentimentality tugs at your heart. Reflect on the growth you have experienced since stepping away, how your empathy has flourished, how your sense of purpose has clarified, and how your communion with the sacred has deepened. It might help to think of your journey as an ongoing pilgrimage, where each step reveals a new layer of divine mystery. You do not claim to have all the answers, but you have discovered a mode of seeking that resonates with your entire being. Each day offers a fresh invitation to live authentically, unencumbered by expectations that no longer serve you. Though challenging, this pilgrimage bestows abundant rewards, internal peace, expanded insight, and a love that seems to stretch wider than before. At times, you may also feel called to be a bridge for those who remain in institutional settings. You can maintain friendships, respect their practices, and share mutual encouragement without compromising your own path. Rather than fueling division, you can embody a spirit of unity. Your journey can serve as a testament that there is room for different expressions of devotion. By holding space for these differences in love, you reflect the divine's inclusivity, teaching others that authenticity matters more than uniformity. If there is any overarching message that emerges from your unfolding story, it is that the divine is limitless in creativity and compassion. Traditional walls can be helpful for some, but they are not mandatory for encountering the sacred. The important thing is to listen with your whole being to the guidance that arises from within. If that guidance leads you beyond what is conventional, so be it. You are not the first nor the last to discover that the Holy One cannot be contained. This realization can be exhilarating, sobering, and ultimately comforting, assuring you that you are exactly where you need to be, doing what you are meant to do, living a life that honors the sacred in every breath. Some people might still look at your choices and see only what you have left behind. A weekly gathering, community events, a structured form of worship. But what they fail to see is all that you have gained. You have stepped into a broader spiritual landscape, one that extends beyond any man-made boundary. There, you have found resilience in times of adversity, courage to embrace the unknown, and a faith that is unshakable because it is rooted in personal experience rather than collective agreement. You have discovered that the divine meets you in silence, in nature, in your dreams, and in the whispers of your own intuition. As your perception expands, you come to value questions as much as answers. No longer bound by a need to present the correct doctrinal stance, you welcome the mystery that surpasses human understanding. Each question becomes an invitation to dive deeper, to explore the richness of a love that cannot be by textbooks or sermons. Paradoxically, this openness does not reduce your faith but strengthens it. You realize that certainty in spiritual matters often involves embracing paradox, trusting that divine truths can be both simple and unfathomable at the same time. This broader perspective also changes how you define community. Instead of a single congregation, you find spiritual kinship in individuals scattered across different walks of life. Perhaps you connect deeply with an artist whose expressions reflect the same divine pulse that moves you, or you befriend a traveler who sees God in every horizon. You may even find common ground with people who identify with entirely different faiths but share the same thirst for the eternal. These connections become reminders that the family of believers is far larger than one building or denomination. All the while, a quiet strength grows inside you. In the past, your sense of belonging might have hinged on acceptance by a particular group. Now, however, you stand solidly in the knowledge that you belong to something greater, the vast ocean of divine life. Even if certain people do not understand your journey, you remain grounded in the certainty that your path is valid. It is this inner assurance that fuels your endurance when criticisms arise or when loneliness creeps in. In time, this internal fortitude flows outward, benefiting not only you but those around you. Friends who are curious about your journey may approach with questions, seeking to understand how you remain so centered without the traditional structures they rely upon. Family members who once expressed concern might grow more accepting as they witness your consistent peace and kindness. Even strangers may sense in you a presence that quietly radiates compassion. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to demonstrate that a vibrant, meaningful faith can exist outside the framework they have always assumed was essential. In this way, your life itself becomes a sermon, delivered through the language of authenticity and love, touching hearts more profoundly than any rigid doctrine could. As you arrive at this juncture of reflection, remember that the journey continues. Each new day is an opportunity to deepen your communion with the sacred, guided by a love that refuses to be contained by rituals alone. You have chosen to walk the path where your spirit can breathe freely, and in doing so, you affirm that the divine meets you in countless forms. There will be moments of doubt, times when the pull of tradition resurfaces, or when you long for the comfort of old rhythms. Yet, these moments are also invitations to reaffirm why you stepped away in the first place. You now recognize that your identity as a chosen one is not about isolation, it is about authentic expression of faith. You are not driven by a desire to stand apart for attention's sake. Rather, you stand apart because your soul yearns to honor a truth that transcends inherited structures. In embracing this role, you have opened the door to an ongoing conversation with God, a dialogue that evolves with every insight, every challenge, and every spark of gratitude that lights up your heart. The beauty of this path lies in the directness of your relationship with the sacred. There is no middleman dictating how you should pray, believe, or act. While this freedom is empowering, it is also humbling, as it reminds you of your responsibility to remain teachable, loving, and sincere. You continually learn that the most significant revelations often emerge in the simplest of moments, when you choose kindness over judgment, patience over haste, compassion over criticism. Looking ahead, you see how your life can be a testament to a spirituality that thrives outside the walls of church buildings. You have stepped into a way of life that reverberates with divine presence in every breath you take. Your purpose now is to embody this truth with integrity, allowing it to shape your words, your actions, and your relationships. This is how you honor the sacred that called you out from among the crowd. In the end, the message is clear: the journey you are on does not negate anyone else's path, nor does it devalue the role that institutions can play in people's lives. It simply acknowledges that you have been entrusted with a unique calling, one that requires this level of freedom and direct engagement with the divine. So, let your heart remain open, your spirit receptive, and your gratitude ever present. For in every challenge and every triumph, you will find the hand of the sacred guiding you, reminding you that this decision, this departure from the expected, was never a detour but a destination where you encounter the fullest expression of your faith. And in that fullness, you truly come alive, embodying a love that spills over into every aspect of your being, illuminating the path for others who secretly yearn for the same liberation.